So we want to hear you first.
Well, let's welcome Jack Alvo, a survivor from 9/11, and the book that you're writing is Escape, One Man's Escape.
It's not a book that's been written. It was the story that was written on September 12th, 2001, which was really just my thoughts of the experience that I'll share now.
Got it. All yours.
So what I will share now is my eyewitness account of the events of 9/11 from the 73rd floor of the South Tower, also known as 2 World Trade Center. So I arrived in my office about 8:30, turned on my workstation, and within about 10 minutes, about 8:45, the lights flickered. We thought, what was that? Looking out the window, I noticed some smoke, debris, some falling papers. One of my colleagues came rushing out of the office yelling, "Go, go, get out, go!" That's a guy that moved so fast he caught an elevator down and caught the last PATH train to New Jersey. The rest of us kind of got up. We made our way out to the stairwell. I wasn't getting on an elevator, and from 73, I got a few floors down. I got down to about 68. And the fire marshal came on the line, and he said, a plane hit the North Tower. Our building's completely secure. He left it open-ended enough that if you want to go back to work, that's okay too. I chose to continue down. From 68, I got down to about 56. And I say curiosity got the better of me. I came out of the stairwell. I went down the corridor, past the elevator. I wasn't getting on the elevator. I went down a hallway into an office space. There were about 20 of us in the office, overlooking the North Tower. And you see the smoke, the debris, the fire. You see people falling, people jumping, people yelling, "Oh my God." Finally, I picked up the phone. I tried getting through to my wife, who was home pregnant that day. The phone didn't come in. Finally, I got into an answering machine, and I just left a message. "You'll hear a plane hit the tower, starting to make my way." Actually, that call never really made it through. It just kind of hung up very quickly. Then I picked up the phone to my mother, my father, in 2 separate calls. And I left similar accounts. And about 10 seconds after I hung up the phone with my father is when the second plane hit. The building rocked like that. And it was like a crashing chandelier over the top. My knees buckled. I knew I couldn't stand where I was. The impact was so strong, it felt like it was underneath my feet. This time I knew I had to move. I had to get away from there. And I made my way back out to the stairwell. And this time I'm moving faster, 50, 40, 30, passing people who were maybe coming from even the higher floors than where I started. I see, some fear in people's eyes, but still there was somewhat orderly descent. And finally, I got down to the mezzanine and in front of firefighters who were first entering the building, jumping the turnstiles. Their fate is still, their bravery is just unbelievable. And the building personnel trying to keep people away from the windows. They were afraid of maybe shattering windows. And finally down an escalator and out onto Church Street in John. Anybody that knows New York. Passing bloodied shoes and broken glass. And I turned around as I'm making my way up toward Broadway, and I see both buildings burning. And as I get up to Broadway, I'm just looking for a colleague, a friend, somebody to share a story. And I couldn't find anybody. I did see a video camera that I did tell this similar story, just trying to share. I never did see that footage all these years later. And I kind of hung around Broadway and John. And as that building started to collapse, as the South Tower started to collapse, the smoke just started billowing up Broadway. And then I would say I was like Usain Bolt, a famous Olympic track sprinter. I started sprinting up Center Street, past City Hall and the courthouses. And I didn't stop until after I got to Canal. And I continued. I just started to make my way up Park Avenue South until I got up to Houston eventually and turned around and watched the North Tower collapse, which was inevitable because having come out of the South Tower, the building that they said was completely secure just an hour earlier, it was inevitable that the North Tower would come down too. And I just continued up Park Avenue South until I got to past Union Square and up to about 28th Street. And I overheard I used to say it was a for some reason, I guess I like the Jaguar. I saw a Jaguar across the way and there were people standing in front listening to a newscast. And it was the first time I had heard anything about a terrorist attack. I just knelt down on one knee and started to break down as I realized I had been spared. Eventually, I was looking for a phone booth, and I found a line that was a little bit shorter, and I couldn't get through initially. In fact, I even ran. Somebody stopped me on the street and asked if they could help me in any way, and they took my phone number down, and I left the phone number, and he said he would continue to try to reach my home. But eventually, I did find a phone booth and a line short enough that I was able to reach my wife. And this was not she was not. It was not a human voice on the other line. The shriek and the sound was just so overwhelming. She said, "Oh my God, Jack, we all thought you were dead." And she says, "Don't talk to anybody. Come straight home." And that's it. Just come straight home. Of course, I talked to anybody that I could find on the way, but I just knew that we were just in shock, and this was the story. Until we got home, it was a miracle that you feel like you got out alive. I thank God I'm alive.
Thank you for sharing Jack's story. Do you have any message, any specific moment that maybe you feel like a message from God, or and during that days, what was your thought in that moment?
I think my thought is that instincts take over first. You have to trust your instincts. And when I look back even at the footage and think about that time, and I realize how my life was really spared, and that at any moment, any of the decisions that you make, you know, that is from a hand of God. It just was not my time. It was, I was meant to be a part of this world and make meaningful change, whether it's in how you affect others or with your family. We still never know exactly, you know, our true purpose, but certainly there is something there that I can say.
Anyone would like to ask questions to Jack? How?
Well,
Go.
It's a very strong story, and we're processing because it feels, you know, like we remember, like I think it was such a historical moment that each one of us, we were not there with you, but we remember what we were doing because it changed the way we saw the world, we saw America, we saw like the security and a lot of things. So like how like if you could share how impacted you in your own life. Was it like a changing moment? What was different after this day for you?
Right. So it was a very, that time, there was a lot of, I would say, defense going on. We really kind of hunkered down in that period after. Now, if you remember, my wife was home pregnant that day. So we was just starting a family. We were going through all of that, of all of our life change in that way. And so while the world was going through so much, we were going through so much turmoil. I mean, there was so much uncertainty at that time for all of us. And you really just kind of hunker down, and you really get a chance to see a lot of both sides. I mean, there were the positives and you see a lot of the warts of our society as well. So while career changes, life changes, just becoming more religious, but that time, and not necessarily more religious. So even you can either feel closer or further away. I guess that's the true feeling, is that you're either going to get closer or further apart. And so when you're going through that much of turmoil and stress, for me, it was bringing us actually closer, not only to, in our case, Hashem, but also closer to our family, my wife, and a lot of times. And I'll share one more thought here, is that many times I've shared this story over the years, yet some things that get lost sometime are my wife's stories, and how all that she went through during that same time. And so that, to hear her stories and her side of it is just an added, like a bonus, so to speak, but it's really so powerful and meaningful as well.
How old you were when this happened, when the 9/11?
Yeah, I was 9/11. It would make me about 30. Let me see. Sorry, about 37, 38 years old.
And the people that they were in the office, and anyone else survived?
Oh yes, many survived. What I will say is that the time was like each minute counted. In World Trade Center, at that time, we had probably 100,000 people in that building. So every minute would have counted. So the fact that the first plane hit about, I think it was 8:46, had it been 9 o'clock or 9:15 or even 9:30, every minute later, there would have been more and more people in that building. But yes, many of us in our specific office, did survive, but we also, there are many stories of that did not make it.
It must be really hard. I was wondering, you said that you stayed in one street looking, and then you turned back when the towers started falling, and you ran a little bit more. Did you ever look back? It took you a time to come back and look what was going on. How was, you know, like the feeling of knowing that it's not there anymore? Like,
So the first part was when it started to run, was when the first building started to collapse, because the smoke and the debris was literally building up. It was a cloud of smoke billowing up Broadway. And so, you know, it just took off like a sprinter, trying to keep that smoke and debris behind me. So anybody and luckily I was healthy enough to, you know, make a sprint like that. But I passed so many people along the way. So when I see those pictures of people, you know, with all the debris and soot on them, you know, these are just people that I was passing that couldn't keep up with me, so to speak. So I just kept, you know, that in mind, and I just kept going. So I just had a straight line north, and I live on the Upper West Side. So for me to go, you know, that was my intention. And then my only look back was when I got up to, you know, like Houston Street. I got up, you know, near the Village there, Soho and the Village, and turned around and watched the North Tower collapse.
Hi, Jack. Thank you for sharing your story. I also know people, I live in New York, so I know people, actually a family member that also managed to run away and ran to Brooklyn.
Thank God. Baruch Hashem.
Thank you. But you're the first person that I've spoken to that shared their story. So this family member refuses to talk about it. And every year we as a family check in, and it's very hard to have a conversation and know the right words to say to somebody that has never shared their experience. So what do you suggest? What do people that don't want to talk about it need to hear?
Yeah, it's a great question. Thank you for asking that. I mean, I've been blessed. So you asked some of the things that I've learned is sharing it, and it becomes very cathartic and therapeutic to share the story. I mean, where I've been blessed is that I had a rabbi at the time who kind of forced me to write that story that I just shared. He had me write down my thoughts. And so, and honestly, I might go off your question of how to approach somebody who's really, to this day, doesn't want to talk about it. I'm not so sure how to approach that, but just, I guess any little bit would count. You know, if they get them to share anything would be a plus. But what I found is that over the time is that even having it written down for myself, even if you can get them to write something, even if it's like a diary for themselves to share for themselves, that, you know, is important, I think. At least I have found it to be important. And then, yeah, over time, I guess, see, by having written it down, when my phone was ringing in that period of time, all people wanted to hear was that story. And so it became like a little scab that you have a wound, and then a scab grows, and then every time somebody said, let's talk about it, the scab is taken off. So it takes a long time to heal that way. And by having it written down or being able to share the story kind of helps that. So yeah, I would just continue to encourage any way that you can.
Thank you.
I have a question. I can imagine running down the building, just having in mind getting out of it. What goes through your mind once you're out of the building and having this sprint, long sprint all the way up there to the north side of New York? What goes through your mind that keeps you running?
Right. So I think that at that time, you're still in shock. And the stress. So I guess it's adrenaline. You're just reacting and running on instinct more than anything else. So I guess you have to learn to trust that first. And so you're just kind of reacting to the situation as it's unfolding. I never really thought too much about that I walked down 73 flights. I never really considered about it. And it's, oh, wow. And I mean, I ended up walking all the way home. And I actually live on the 73rd. I live on 73rd Street. So it's all connected that way. And you just keep going. Yeah. I think it's just stress, adrenaline, shock, some combination of the three. Yeah.
Thank you.
I have some people here that cannot use the microphone, so I will read a couple of questions I am getting. I will give you two. Did you stop to pray at any time? And did you go back afterwards?
Did I stop to pray? I think I only prayed when I got home. And I realized, that I was home safe with my family, my wife, and that was where the prayer comes in. And as far as going back, it took a very long time to go back. In fact, even today, I've never been to the memorial or anything like that. So to go back to the area, to the spots, took a very long time. It took many years, actually. In fact, I remember very specifically seeing the footprints of the buildings, and it was probably over a year before I had seen that the first time.
Excuse me, can I say something? I don't have a question. I just want to say thank you to you, because for people like you, we can really know what happened that day, because we just see the news, okay, the tower's falling, but we never really get to know the real stories of all the people that were or passed through these experiences. So thank you so much, really. I really appreciate that. So that's what I wanted to say.
Well, I appreciate your comments and your observation. And what I have to say to that is that I've learned over the years how important it is to continue to share this story. And I'm just one survivor, but there are so many stories, some unbelievable stories that I just, every time, even today, as I shared some of my story on Facebook with some friends, and I have to say that I've shared this story many times over 19 years, that I still hear more stories, unbelievable stories. And so what I've learned is that it's important to continue to share this, because especially with younger people like yourselves who maybe were, infants at the time, or even if you were a little bit older, if you were 15, you were still a teenager even, or younger. So it's really, we've come so far, yet in such in even a 19-year span, but it's so important to continue to hear these stories.
I can imagine that it's not easy at all to say that, because it was a shock at that moment, and I really appreciate your time. And for people like you, we can really know what happened,
Sure.
And you know, we always say that it's good to remember so things are not going to repeat. So I wonder, like, if you will have like any thoughts about how we can make this world better and try to take care of one each other and not repeat this kind of events.
Yeah, I think this is a difficult question. I think that it's just important for us to continue to share and to remember the little things in life. That everything, we're in such a connected world, and things are so small. Look, we're on a Zoom chat all over the world, even right now. 20 years ago, it wasn't like that. It would take us, so long to connect like this. So we're so intertwined in so many ways, and just even any little spark, any good deed, any mitzvah that we do for one another, can really have a serious ripple effect. We don't even know. We think it's some very simple things, ordinary things that we might share, and they can have a profound effect as we go forward. So let's go together.
Jack, maybe I missed the first part of the speech, but when you were going down the stairs, the first thing was, what do you guys thought that happened? Like an accident, like maybe a air condition explode, or what was your first thought? Well, you never imagined that it was an attack with the airplane, no?
Right. So yeah, we didn't really know the full extent of that initially, but there were, interesting that some people, like when I said, one of the guys came rushing out of his office yelling, "Go, go, get out, go." That's a guy that was there in '93. He moved so fast, he wasn't wasting any time. It went right across, the first plane went right past his window, hitting the North Tower. We were in the South Tower. He saw it. He had a visual on it. So even if we all did not, but that's a guy that moved so fast, and his instinct was to go running, yelling, and taking the first elevator down in the last PATH train to New Jersey. I mean, that's, for the rest of us, it was just a little bit, we were a little bit slower to react.
I have a couple of questions here from other people.
And then before you ask the question quickly, the guy survived? This guy that he told you to go, 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 he survived?
Of course, yes, he was a survivor. I'll give you one other juxtaposition of another guy who was also there at the time. He had a gas mask. He was there also in '93. Had a gas mask in his desk drawer. He put it on and never left. When his assistant came to see him, he said, "Lindsay, it's time to go." He said, "These are the strongest buildings in the world." So in the same situation, two very different reactions. One guy is running and the other guy is staying.
Go, Denise, go. Sorry.
Joseph asked, what made you decide to continue going down the stairs instead of staying in the building to wait for an update when the fire marshal said the building was safe?
Well, I think that goes back to just being maybe a native New Yorker, or just going to, you're just trusting your instinct. It's the same way as I was taking the stairs and not the elevator. There was no way I was getting on an elevator at the time. So to continue down the stairs, as I said, curiosity got the better of me. I came out of the stairwell and went down the corridor and into that office space. That was my curiosity getting the better of me. It wasn't me continuing down so fast. It took till you finally see until the building got hit, the second plane hit, and then to continue. So it's just, I guess you got to trust your instinct. Is the only thing I could think of at that moment.
Did the survivors receive therapy or any help from the government afterwards?
I'm sorry, can you repeat that?
Did the survivors receive therapy or any help from the government?
Yeah, that's a great question. The truth is, many of us fell through the cracks with that. I was working for Morgan Stanley at the time, and so I was told, well, you're working for them, let them help you. And the truth is, at the time, there was very little being done. Occasionally, you could maybe go see a therapist or not, but there really was very little. We were still in defense mode. I specifically was in defense mode, that's for sure.
I have a question. My grandfather was also a survivor. He was in his 80s at the time doing an audit for Goldman Sachs. It took him all day to get back home, as he also had to walk. But my question is more about, I remember on September 12th, the whole country was united, and we thanked our first responders. And 19 years later, with history being in the making today, with Israel finding peace with the Middle East and America, how do you feel like our response is today as a country towards our first responders, 19 years later, and how that has changed and how we're so divided right now? What are your thoughts of how we can go back to September 12th when we were all united?
Oh. That's a great question. And I think that it's just moments like this that we can share our stories and try to, make any change that we can, any positive change. Yes, we do remain so divided in so many ways, and we're living with the pandemic right now and COVID and all of these things that are so hard to put our arms around. So I think just the little changes that we can make to share with one another are so impactful. And I also, I'm so conflicted with what you've said, in that I don't think that we're supporting the first responders enough at all. And that's it, and it continues to divide us, and that's not any positive changes that we can make at any time really is what will help.
Actually, what you just say, Jack, and it's so true what Talia said before, I think that unfortunately, when things are not good and when we are more united, when we live in freedom, so we sometimes forgot about the beautiful of life and the beautiful of being together, and then when we start fighting or dividing ourselves.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, that's true.
Any more questions? My wife is asking did you see more people going with you when you were going down? There were other people going with you together, or you by yourself?
Oh, no, there were so many of us in the stairwells. There were many, many people in the stairwells. And some you were passing along the way because you don't know where they came from. I started on the 73rd floor. You don't know, maybe people started on 100. There were over 100 floors in the towers. So people that I were passing along the way, even in the 60s or the 50s or the 40s, yes, there were plenty of people along the way. I would just say that it was somewhat orderly versus, you know, you don't think that there was so much chaos running, you know, down the steps. I don't want to give that impression. At least that was not my experience.
When the second airplane hit the tower, where you were you? You were already in the street, no?
No, and the second one hit, I was still on the 56th floor.
Oh.
So I was still on the 56th floor, and that's when the building rocked, and like literally like that. And it was like a crashing chandelier over the top. And that's when my knees buckled. I knew I couldn't stand where I was. And that's when I made my way back out to the stairwell and continued down.
There were people helping other people.
Yes, there were some along the way that might helping on the stairs or, yes, I chose to continue down. It was always one of the biggest fears my wife had, is knowing that I usually would have stopped to help along the way, and thinking that I can just continue down the way I did. It was a little bit out of character for me.
Wow. Do you think that